What is up, race fans? It's the Nitro Racing Series on the HSL Diecast Racing channel, and we've got a special treat for you guys this week. It is the first of our time travel special series. We're going to Riverside Raceway. Yes, you heard me right, Riverside. You might say, wait a minute, that track's abandoned now. They tore that down to build apartments. Well, they did, but we have a DeLorean, and we can tow each of the cars there, get it up to 88 miles an hour, and go there on a day that the Winston Cup wasn't using it, and that's exactly what we're going to do. It's the Nitro Series' first ever appearance on a road course. It's going to be awesome. Without further ado, let's get to qualifying. So here is our points leader, Jimmy. He regained the points lead after a podium finish last week, almost actually won. The gate is down, and he goes into turn one. Into turn two, loses a lot of speed there. He may not make it across. Good thing he has plenty of points to get in on. Hugs the wall, and he's still going, albeit very slowly. And he does cross the line. That's a 24.19. And he'll probably start towards the back. Now here's Ross Chastain. He's been electrifying the last couple races. Just picked up his first career win at Texas Motor Speedway. The gate's down, pushes his car back halfway up the starting gate. That doesn't seem to have stopped him. He's got a lot more speed than Jimmy. Hasn't touched the walls much. Goes on the inside to take the corner. Exits the corner, maintains his speed. And that's a 16.63. Now here is Alan Kulwicki, currently third in points. Much better start, carrying as much speed as Ross Chastain, and ooh, he bounces against the wall once. Gets a little sideways going into the turn. It's a little more sideways coming out of it. And he's going to stall short of the finish line. He is going to be starting in the back, making it in on points. And here is Sterling Marlin. He's one of the faster cars on the track. He had an unfortunate DNF in the last event, dropped him down in the points, but he's still steadily in the top five. Smooth as a knife through butter. Look at that. Doesn't lose any speed in the corner. Almost picks up speed coming out of the corner. And it's a little squirrely at the end, but that's good for a 14.57. And here is Pete Hamilton. Gets tripped up at the start gate. Recovers. Goes into turn one. Loses a lot of speed in turn one. That casting maybe just a little too long for that track to successfully go through it. And stalls out before hitting turn two and sinks to the bottom of the track. He'll be starting in the back. And now here's Ricky Craven in the number 50 car. The gate's down. Hesitates a little bit. This is one of the heavier castings. And just like Pete Hamilton, loses a lot of speed in that turn. And does not make it out of the second turn. He'll be qualifying in the race on points. And here's Richard Petty. Very fast car, but very unstable. Gets a lot of pushback from the start gate. It's a similar casting that Ross Chastain has. It's this car has a plastic chassis though, so it's a little bit lighter. And he gets too squirrely inside the turn and loses all of his momentum and slowly comes to a halt shortly before the finish line. He is qualified on points, starting towards the back. And here's Johnny Benson, the same casting as Ricky Craven. Some of these cars were actually quite fast at Texas, but a second turn is not their friend here, it seems. And he fares a little better than Craven coming out of turn one. And he rides up the track too much and stalls it out. Another one lucky to get in on points. Here is Bill Elliott. He opened the season with a podium and has had a DNF in every race since. He's looking to turn his luck around here, going back in time to the place where he got his first Winston Cup win. And he shoots out of turn one with more speed than anybody else so far. Loses a lot of the speed in turn two. Rides the high line the whole way. Looks like he'll still make it across the line, and he does. That's a 1947. This is Rusty Wallace. He's the highest ranked early 90s racing champions. That car actually has a couple of top 10s this year. I think he has a best finish of 8th, and carries his momentum towards the end of turn 2, and then his run fizzles. He'll make it in on points, and this is Todd Bodine. He currently sits 11th in points, but he's certainly not the 11th fastest car. He's just had a lot of bad luck. And he comes out of turn 1 with some speed. Brushes the wall. Exits turn 2 carrying his momentum, and that's a 16.06. That'll probably get him a front row starting spot. He's currently 2nd. And now we have Jeff Fuller, our last car guaranteed a spot on points. Oh, and he flies out of there like a rocket ship. And he crashes. Jeff Fuller crashes after flying out of turn 1. He recovers and gets back on the track, but lost all of his speed, jumping over the lip. And that is a DNF. He will be starting towards the back. He'll be starting last as long as we have enough people outside the top 12 in points finish their lap. Now here is David Reagan, his 3rd place finish in his debut last week. Catapulted him all the way up to 13th in points. Some of you may be skeptical of that point system. I weighted it heavily to reward podium finishes, maybe too much. I might change that for next season, but that is a DNF. He's tentatively not going to race this week. And E. Marshall in the number 10. He's another, much like Todd Bodine, pretty fast casting that's had some bad luck in the races. His luck's been bad enough that he is outside of the top 12, despite qualifying for at least 3, maybe all of the races, and he spins out short of the finish line. That's a DNF. This is D. Driver. He is teammates to our points leader Jimmy, as well as Bubba Wallace, who you'll see in a few minutes. He comes out of turn 1 with some speed, goes into turn 2, looking pretty fast, and just loses it coming out of turn 2. Slows down to a crawl. Will he finish the lap? He will not. Puts it into neutral, just a few inches shy of the finish line. Now here is Ryan Blaney. This car and the other cars from the same modern Lionel castings, they shot out the gate with the first couple starting spots at Daytona and haven't done much since. And he has some trouble in turn 1. Gets himself on 2 tires for a second. And that's a DNF. He'll probably not be racing unless all of these people DNF and we have a bunch of guys getting in on points outside of the top 12. And here's Jeff Gordon in a new car. The last couple races he's DNQ'd. So he brought in his backup car. It's a slightly newer car, a Tomorrow casting, and he gets a little squirrely, bumps the wall, and DNFs. Now here's Michael Waltrip. Started off the season with a bang, got an early pole position, and has kind of sort of fizzled. Hasn't kept up with Todd Bodine and Sterling Marlin like the other Hot Wheels castings. And he almost reaches the finish line and does not. He comes a few inches short. And up next is Bubba Wallace, teammate of Jimmy and D. Driver, that same casting. These cars don't have a traditional suspension like a Hot Wheels. It's more like a dollar store car. I think these were dollar store cars, but that hasn't stopped Jimmy from holding the points lead. His teammates not so lucky. They're out of the top 12 due to repeated DNFs. including a DNF on this qualifying run for Bubba Wallace. He will probably not make it into the show. And this is Ace Grimm. He had a top 10 finish. I believe he was 7th last week in his debut. Of course, getting into the seconds race by driving underneath Sterling Marlin, causing a DNF for him. And like a lot of these other older racing champions, does not have enough speed coming out of turn 1 to make it and finish the lap. And this is Elmo Langley. He's only been in half of the races so far. He's looking a little better than Ace Grimm, this being also an older racing champions casting. Very narrow axles, and doesn't make it out of the second turn. That is a DNF. Now here is Harrison Burton. He just got his first win in real life and made the playoffs. Congratulations to him. But in the NITTRO Series, he has not had very much luck. DNQs and DNFs, like most of these drivers in this portion of qualifying. Gets a good run through the first turn and slides to the bottom of the track. Doesn't even make it into the second. Somehow loses all of his speed in between the first and second turns. That is also a DNF. And this is Bobby Labonte. He started the season off well. Looked like a top 12 contender the first couple races, but has sort of tapered off since then. And he's looking a little faster than Harrison Burton. Gets into the first turn, out of the first turn, into the second. And there he loses all of his momentum. That's a DNF. There's a lot of DNFs here, even by drivers in the top 12. Now here's David Green. Maybe he can break the streak. We've had like a dozen DNFs in a row. I've lost count of them. But Todd Bodine had a good lap. Sterling Marlin had a good lap. And they had very similar castings. So David Green makes it out of the turn, gets a little loose, hits the wall, and he gets through there. That's 16:57. At this rate, he will make the race. That actually is good for third place. Here's Ricky Rudd. Similar casting to David Green and the drivers that are a bit higher in points, except this is a Ford body. Very similar chassis, but a Ford body, and that's a 1619. And this is an identical car to Ricky Rudd. This is Jeremy Mayfield. He's been very much like Ricky Bobby. Very fast, but inconsistent. Fast, but crashes a lot. Sometimes he's too fast for his own good, but this time he looks smooth. That was the best lap I've seen so far. That's a 1384. That'll put him on the pole. And here is Ronnie McD. I don't think he's made a start since maybe the opener, maybe Bristol. He shoots out of turn 1. Looks like he'll make it into turn 2. A lot of these older racing champions haven't made it out of turn 2, though, and he just slides to the bottom of the track midway through the second turn. That is a DNF. And this is Stacy Compton. He's currently last place in points, tied with Morgan Shepherd. Both of their only starts so far have been last place finishes. Gets a wild amount of pushback from the stopper, and he's down the track. He actually looks to have recovered pretty well for that. And he carries his momentum well into turn 2. Maybe went into it a little too fast. Hits the wall, goes up on 2 tires, recovers, but may not make it back to the line. Nope. He is going to sputter out just short of the finish line. If he hadn't gone into the wall and gotten onto 2 tires, he probably would have finished the lap. Now here is Kaz Gralla, another one of our back markers. He's only qualified once so far. And that, of course, was a DNF. These drivers are not very high in the point standings. And, oh, he turfed it coming out of turn 2. He was looking like a lot of the other late 90s Hot Wheels, but he played a little bit of pinball coming out of turn 2, and that'll stop him short of the line. Now here is Morgan Shepherd, another driver with a DNF as his only start. I believe he got a DNF at Le Mans, and does not have much speed going into turn 1, even less speed coming out of it, and Doesn't even come close to turn 2. That is a DNF. So this is Jimmy Means. It's a new car. First time appearance making his attempt to qualify. And I guess that means that our points leader, Jimmy, is not Jimmy Means. That's one Jimmy that we can safely say is not him. And unlike Jimmy, this Jimmy Means, will not be racing here at Riverside. That's a DNF. And here we have Ty Dillon in the 77 car, another new guy trying to make his debut in the NITTRO Series, get some pushback from the start gate. Certain cars are... This casting has struggled in qualifying. I think both Blaney and Burton failed to qualify, and it looks like Dillon will do the same. And here is Terry Labonte. He's made a couple of attempts. I believe he's going to be disqualified from this. This car is going to be disqualified if it doesn't finish the lap here. Unlike a lot of these other older racing champions, this one did not get into the back end of the field at all, and he sinks to the bottom of the track. That's a DNF. I doubt we'll be seeing him much longer. Same goes for Jamie McMurray here. Jamie McMurray gets some pushback from the start gate. His car had been finishing laps, but usually it had been among the slowest to do so, and therefore he hasn't made a start yet this season because things like that happen during qualifying. Won't be seeing his car much longer. And here's Joey Logano, another one that's on the hot seat for this season. I believe his car might have even finished a couple of the races, but unfortunately was not as fast as Martin Truex Jr. or Ryan Blaney consistently, and I doubt we'll be seeing much more of Joey Logano this season. Now here's a couple of more newer castings. This is Matt Kenseth driving the number 17 Ford, gets some pushback. This is our first Matchbox stock car we've tried on here. This has mainline wheels, not collector's wheels. This car might be fast. This might be something to be reckoned with. And he glides along the wall, slowly trudges towards the finish line, and records a 20:31. At this rate, he will get in the race by virtue of completing a lap. This is Ted Musgrave with a car swap. His car was disqualified after DNFs earlier this season, and he decides to come in with a slightly newer model, sees Bill Elliott, Jeff Fuller in the top 12 in points with that casting, and he's not so lucky, unfortunately. Now this is a cool looking car, the Black Flag car. This is Mo Hawk, our resident punk rocker, representing his favorite punk rock band, and you'll see his cousin later this season. And but right now, Mo Hawk testing the waters in the NITTRO Series before his more famous cousin gets back from Australia. You'll hear more about that in a couple races, but that's a DNF. This here is Johnson Jr. This car was picked out and named by a fellow NASCAR and Hot Wheel collector, and it's another little preview for more things to come for the channel after this first season of 12 races is done. Johnson Jr. driving, of course, Junior Johnson's Ford Thunderbird from 1992. And he might make it in. Yes, he does. Johnson Jr. gets into the race. That's a 23:06. That's the second slowest time among the drivers that finished a lap. But he will get in because we only have one more driver left. That is Swervin' Irvin, fresh out of the blister pack. This is our first winner's circle car to compete in the series, and it looks pretty good so far. Loses a little bit of speed in the turn, and that will be a DNQ. Still better than his last car, which had a sticky tire. So here is a look at our starting lineups for the race. Jeremy Mayfield is our pole sitter. He looks to move himself out of the points basement in this race. 10 cars qualified by speed. The front rows will be cars that race their way in, finish the lap. The cars starting in the back 2 rows are cars that got in on points. Now, because 8 cars that are outside of the top 12 in points get to qualify for each event and only 5 finished a qualifying lap, that means David Reagan, E. Marshall, and D. Driver still don't know what those people's initials are for. E. Marshall might stand for Eddard, like he's from Game of Thrones. I mean, who knows, maybe D. Driver stands for Dangerous Driver, because he has gotten quite a few DNFs. But those 3 got in on points because nobody else could finish their qualifying lap. So hit that like button and we'll see you on race day.